average draft position is the roadmap, but value is the treasure. Real draft wins come round by round. And so I think the first round, Mike, is where we'll start here. And I guess, you know, kind of the starting point is some of this depends on when you're drafting, but we're going to give ourselves carte blanche, as it were, to pick wherever we want and get the desired player of interest. And so I'll let you start the ball rolling and just kind of roll into who you like and maybe some guys that you're avoiding.
Yeah, sure. Look, I'm going to say for me, the guy, and I'm not saying I take him at number one because that's generally where you have to take Jamar Chase if you want an even distribution of some of the top players. But Bijan Robinson, Bob, is a guy that I haven't gotten enough shares of. Maybe I just haven't had the exact right pick. I've had the number one overall. I generally spend it on Chase. I've gotten Saquon in that range. That's fine. I don't mind that, but I just feel like I've missed out on Bijan. He's got, the young, fresher legs. You do have Saquon coming off, one of the most historically high carry total seasons ever. And I don't think he's going to collapse and go by the wayside. But, I think Bijan is ascending. I think they figured out it's a pretty easy formula. Force feed him the ball. He can handle a lot of work. Great receiver out of the backfield. So I like him, and I put him there. I don't think they're really, with the consensus ADP, any bad first round picks here.
Right.
They're all really good players, obviously. What was interesting to me is that McCaffrey actually ended up in the first round ADP wise with the consensus of all these sites. And if I had to say one guy that I wouldn't take in the first round, it might be him, simply because I've gotten him so often as late as like the middle of the second round, right? So just for that reason alone, like I've gotten a lot of investment. And for folks listening, I just did a quick count. I've got 36 best ball 10 teams that I've either completed or I'm in the midst of completing, and probably another 20 on Underdog. So, not quite 60 drafts yet, but a decent amount right now. So I've got my investment in McCaffrey at a cheaper price. I think he's fine. You're talking about semantics here because that's the 1-2 turn. And somewhat, what order do you take him in, right? Who goes 12th? Who goes 13th? Who's a first? Who's a second rounder? But I don't really think there's a bad player in here. I think we're a little bit over our skis by the tiniest margin on Ashton Genty at 7. I understand the workload and the talent and all that, but we haven't seen it yet. I'm not opposed to investing in rookie running back, so I understand why people want a piece of the next big thing.
Right, as we're looking at the first round, I'll set the table. Mike, Bijan's going as the running back, is the third pick overall. Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, as Mike said, you're paying that historic premium for him. Bijan next. His workload down the stretch was very similar to Barkley's. Once they got it figured out in Atlanta, I think that's the key there. Justin Jefferson at 4, Jahmyr Gibbs at 5. High touchdown numbers last year. I wonder if we're going to see that repeated. CeeDee Lamb at 6, Ashton Genty, as Mike mentioned, at 7, Malik Neighbors at 8, Puka Nacua at 9, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 10, coming off knee surgery. I wonder if that might change it, whether it should or not. We usually react to the news. Derrick Henry's at 11. Mike mentioned McCaffrey at 12. Derrick Henry is the apple of my eye this year. I'm hoping I'm drafting later in the draft or later in the round so I can get him. 1,137 yards after contact last year were more than all but 8 running backs overall last year. Before, after, during, between contact, whatever. Had 2 runs, 2 of the fastest 20 speeds on the season this year, 21.72 miles an hour, 21.46. So in the top 20 twice. He's still got it. I know he's getting older, but the workload's still going to be there. And so if I'm drafting late, we're moving into the second round. I think that's where it gets interesting. I know we probably both like the same guy. And this ADP, we haven't seen this a lot in our best balls, right? The Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico Collins, 13 and 14, both going in the second round. That's been unusual. Devon Achane going at 15, Brock Bowers at 16, Drake London at 17, A.J. Brown at 18, Jonathan Taylor, 19, Bucky Irving, 20, Josh Jacobs, 21, Ladd McConkey, 22, Trey McBride, 23, and Josh Allen right at the tail end of that round at 24. Just because I drafted last, I think one of those 2 wide receivers are going to be great for me. I think you like one of them as well. I'll go ahead and say if I drafted 11th and I'm coming back around, I'll follow the ADP and go Nico Collins. 5 games to open the season last year. He was on pace for 100 catches and 2,000 yards. He was wide receiver 2 over that span. but there's something to be said for number 13, and I think that's your choice.
Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. You could go Nico Collins either way on this, and people are going to see the Jag flag above my head and think I'm going to homer up on this. But you know how I am, man. I'm a mercenary. I'll take points from anybody, and I just think this was a reflection of this. These are, like you said, both that pair are guys you typically see. At least I typically see around picks 10 and 11. And while it may not seem like much, you got to make that decision at 10 or 11. Am I going to go with Henry there and come back if you want to split up your team and start it with an even running back, wide receiver balanced beginning? Do I want to go with the running back first? Look, at times I've taken the wide receiver at 11 and then watched it go running back, and that's fine. I'll come back with the other wide receiver if you get this mix of players there. Glad McConkey's the other one that stands out. I'm not. Some people think he should be around the 1-2 turn. That's a little rich for my blood. There's a lot of change in that unit, and I don't doubt McConkey is going to be a very solid player here. And you do get a discount getting him towards the tail end of round 2 a little bit. Look, I don't have a problem if you go Brock Bowers at this range. In fact, early on, I probably took Brock Bowers in the late first round in a couple of drafts. And then once ADP started to roll in, you're like, I don't need to do that. I started thinking about it, Bob. He had a historic season. Do you always follow a historic season with an even better one? I think that's what people are banking on. Right. You've got a quarterback who's never utilized the tight end to great fantasy effect, coming in with the head coach that he played under all that time. I don't think they're going away from Bowers, but they're also revamping that offense. Genty went where he did because they're going to get him the ball an awful lot in this offense. I think they have better options there. And I think, too, Bob, the thing, maybe not based on this ADP, but in many leagues that I've drafted, you can get Trey McBride a round later. Maybe you can get George Kittle 2 to 2.5 rounds later there. I think that, to me, I'm more leaning into some of the other early, running back, wide receivers picks in that range rather than going Bowers.
And I would agree with you. I think Jonathan Taylor is a guy 2 years removed from being probably the consensus number 1 overall in many drafts. Is a guy that's a pretty good value. Are we both uncomfortable with Bucky Irving at this price?
I am. And now, look, if you get the Bucky Irving we saw down the stretch, why should you be nervous about it, right? But I don't know. You've got a new offensive coordinator. Anytime you have that significant change and it's not clearly a change for the better, it's one thing if you fire a guy and you upgrade. It's another if you lose your guy. And, I'm in a recent dynasty startup, and Bucky Irving went at the 1-2 turn, and I thought, oh, good. I don't have to worry about it then. I'm not going to play, I'm not ready to plant my flag that early on Bucky Irving, not for the long term. But I understand why people have done it. I don't think there are any tragic picks here. I'm a little worried about Josh Jacobs, maybe at 21, paying off that value, right? We're starting, maybe they're going to diversify the backfield a little bit more this year. And he was very touchdown heavy. And I'm probably not pulling the trigger on Josh Allen. But I do get the idea that if you get the number 1 wide receiver or running back, whoever you take at number 1, you come back with what you believe to be the number 1 quarterback and another great piece to start your team. That's pretty appealing. I understand the appeal of it, but I'm still waiting longer on quarterback.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of with you on this. And by the way, on Bucky Irving, someone else is going to be the hero. I will gladly congratulate them if they're successful with it. And it's not totally out of the question, just not my comfort zone. I think the problem with the wide receivers in round 3, let's run through the entire list here. 25, the first pick of round 3, T. Higgins, Kyron Williams at 26, Chase Brown at 27, Lamar Jackson is at 28, Garrett Wilson at 29, Terry McLaurin 30, Jackson Smith-Njigba 31, Breece Hall 32, Jaden Daniels 33, Marvin Harrison Jr. 34, Tyreek Hill and James Cook 35 and 36 respectively. Who's your Huckleberry here?
Look, where are you getting Jackson Smith-Njigba 31? I'm not. There's always somebody in one of the drafts I'm in that's taken him pick 22, 23, something like that. He doesn't get to the 2-3 turn in most of the drafts I've been in. So that really stood out to me. I think, clearly he's going to be the focal point of that passing game. Cooper Kupp will be a nice complementary piece there. And, Sam Darnold showed you he could support Justin Jefferson. So I don't have that much of a concern with the quarterback shift up there in Seattle. That stands out to me in a big way. I mean, some of these other wide receiver, Bob Garrett Wilson's super talented. Great. He's hooking up with Justin Fields. They've got that Ohio State chemistry. Who's going to draw any coverage away from him? He's going to be doubled on every snap, you would think, right? So those are some of the concerns. All these guys are talented. You can make a case for them. I don't like Terry McLaurin right now being dissatisfied with his contract status. It'll probably work itself out, but got a quarterback going into year 2. You add a big piece like Deebo Samuel, who may be a big piece, may not. How much is that going to impact Terry McLaurin? I just feel out of all these options, Smith-Njigba is the one I'm definitely most comfortable with in the middle of the round.
I think even with the discussions we heard, Michael Sean Dugar, our friend from The Athletic, talk a little bit about the shifting roles. He's going to play more of the X with Kupp coming in, probably doing more of the short and intermediate. I don't think that should scare anyone off. I think it's kind of like, oh, they're changing. I don't know that it's a change for the worse, and I think the target's going to be there. I like Kyron Williams an awful lot in this round. Sure. I think maybe people, seems like we're dialed back pretty far on a guy who finished in the top 10 last year. He's going as running back 11 at this 26 overall spot. And I think both you and I, like if T. Higgins was a little cheaper, we'd love to cash in on that bargain because even as a wide receiver too in a super pass heavy offense, he's been super effective when he's on the field. But that 25 is a little rich for me with the array of players after him. Let's dive into round 4. Round 4, Mike, I found to be as target rich an environment as you'd want to have. We'll start out with 37 and 38, 2 players I love, Davante Adams and Mike Evans. Rashee Rice, 39. Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, 40 and 41. DJ Moore, 42. George Kittle, 43. Joe Mixon, 44. Omari and Hampton, 45. Alvin Kamara, 46. Devontae Smith, 47. And Kenneth Walker III in Seattle with a new coordinator who did wonderful things for Alvin Kamara last year at 48.
I think I have 5 guys who are my favorite pick in this round. Is that allowed? Right. I don't know. I started looking, breaking it down by round. I'm like, okay, James Cook, easy, right? Who knows where this is going to go. That's looking ugly right now. They're far apart. He'll probably show up because it's so penalizing financially not to, but disgruntled situations. I say, oh, Mike Evans, I love Mike. Oh, that's going to be, no, wait a minute. Hold on here. Go a little further. I want George Kittle. George Kittle is going to be my guy here in this round. All right, I'm going to skip Mixon. That's oh, no, wait a minute. No, not you, Kittle. It's Alvin Kamara. It's definitely Alvin Kamara.
Are you sure?
Kenneth Walker. Yeah, I'm going to stay with Alvin Kamara. All right, I did stay with Alvin Kamara here. I think Alvin Kamara, if we're assuming a PPR league, is, look, bad offense doesn't scare me. Rookie quarterback in a bad offense, what is that going to do? He's going to lean the hell on dumping it down to Alvin Kamara, man. I mean, I don't see why you would expect any much of a fallback. Certainly not to the point where you're getting him at the end, around the 4-5 turn. In fact, it's interesting, Bob. You mentioned Kyron Williams. He went, I think ADP was 25, right? I took him at the 1-2 turn 26. Yesterday in a draft, which was pick 25, right, 26, okay? Alvin Kamara, just today, before coming on with you, I took with pick 48 at that 4-5 turn. It's like 4-5, he's there. I'm looking, it's him or Chuba Hubbard kind of for me right there. And I know we'll see him leading off the next round. But yeah, I'm comfortable with Kamara being my RB1. If I go wide receiver, or 2 wide receivers and a tight end.
Like if most drafts, Davante Adams or Mike Evans would not be available in round 4, if I'm drafting, I'm probably taking them both ahead of this price. So I'm going to throw them out. I would love to take both of them. I'm just going to go with George Kittle just because I think he's the value of the high-end tight end tier, that top 3 tier. Like, I'm fine with McBride. He was great, but Kittle finished with higher points per game than both he and Bowers last year, 15.8. I think every season he's played at least 14 games. 6 seasons. He's been a top 5 fantasy tight end. He's super consistent, super high end. Some of the receiving changes there make sense to me, but I don't know that there's a wrong pick. I like the way Clint Kubiak talks about Alvin Kamara. Or not Alvin Kamara. He talked about him last year, about Kenneth Walker III this year, the speed that he has, but the home run swinger that he is a little bit worrisome, and that's kind of been his problem. And the presence of Zach Charbonnet is also a worry. So let's go to round 49, and there's a pretty good list of round 5.
Pick 49. Sure.
There's a pretty good range of players here too, starting with Chuba Hubbard at 49, Cortland Sutton at 50, Xavier Worthy 51, RJ Harvey. we're going to feel about him if J.K. Dobbins signs. Jamison Williams at 53, Teteroa McMillan 54, DK Metcalf 55, Zay Flowers 56, James Conner 57, Travion Henderson, the first Patriot running back off the board, at 58, Travis Hunter at 59, Sam Laporta at 60.
Yeah, with RJ Harvey, we got to understand, and not you, I'm just in general in fantasy football, that ADP is a living statistic, right? It's
Correct.
changing, but maybe there are, hundreds or thousands of drafts built in, and then you get news like, oh, J.K. Dobbins is coming along. It takes a while for the ADP to react. So it's good for people to take ADP in snapshots when they can. Look at the last week to 2 weeks. We do that all the time on the Football Diehards radio show. I like RJ Harvey, but it would absolutely be worrisome if J.K. Dobbins ends up there, Bob. First guy, I mentioned Chuba Hubbard last round, so I love him in this round. I love Cortland Sutton in this round as well. I'm not as sure about Xavier Worthy right there. RJ Harvey. I love Jamison Williams. I'll pass on Teteroa McMillan. DK Metcalf. I'm happier that Aaron Rodgers is there in Pittsburgh. Anyway, going through, I come to our old standby, James Conner, and I'm like, I don't know that Trey Benson's going to hurt James Conner that much this year. I think he's got one more last hurrah as the clear-cut front runner in that backfield. So I like that there. And if you like Sam Laporta enough that you're not getting maybe quite the Kittle production, but you're getting it a round and a half later. So there are good values to be found here. I would say Connor and maybe Sutton, those two guys at the top of my list.
Yeah, I like those guys, both his values. You mentioned Laporta. I think he was 13.3 points per game over the final 7 games. The slow start did him in, but the ending was like rookie level for him. I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard here. Last year with Jonathan Brooks out, career highs in attempts with 250 yards with 1,195, touchdowns with 10, had some good reception numbers. I think the workload stays there. Rico Dowdle comes in. I think he's a solid Miles Sanders replacement. Maybe better than Miles Sanders, but also maybe not. I don't know that we'll see any more of him than we did there. But you're right. There are a handful of guys in this round that I would not mind having. And if I ended up with Cortland Sutton, if I ended up with James Conner, as you well know, I have many times, I would be fine with that. And even Laporta, I have on a number of teams. Let's go to round 6 or round 5 we're in, right?
6. Going to 6.
Round 6 already. Look at me. I'm keeping track well. Chris Godwin at 61. David Montgomery at 62. Patrick Mahomes at 63. Calvin Ridley at 64. George Pickens 65. Jalen Waddle at 66. Jerry Jeudy at 67. Caleb Johnson, the Pittsburgh Steelers rookie, at 68. Quinshawn Judkins behind Caleb Johnson, the Cleveland Browns rookie running back. Aaron Jones at 70, Chris Olave at 71, Jordan Addison 72. I think this is not his target-rich environment. There's some clear standouts to me.
Yeah, I don't like this round. I really don't, except for a handful of exceptions. You're not going to hear me say Mahomes. I don't think he's a bad value if all those other quarterbacks are gone, but I'm still not taking a quarterback in this range, typically. I mean, you go through a Godwin coming off a major injury, right? Calvin Ridley is playing with a rookie quarterback. George Pickens is a head case who could, implode at any moment. Jalen Waddle has been a disappointment most of his career. Now, there are reasons to think that maybe with Jonnu possibly being traded and Tyreek Hill being a little bit flaky, that Waddle could be that guy. Who's Jerry Jeudy's quarterback going to be? You go on and on, right? Chris Olave with the injury stuff. So to me, it came down to the safety of David Montgomery, Bob. Look, I understand Ben Johnson's gone, but why would you go away from the system that has worked so well in letting Jahmyr Gibbs be that explosive element all over the field? But when it comes down to the goal line, here's David Montgomery in round 6. In particular, if you're in a standard league or a half-point PPR, I love Montgomery. I'll take him as my RB2. If I know I could get him in the 6th round, that's part of this too. When you're drafting early on, man, you really get a feel for this ADP because, if I could go at the 4-5 turn, if I have the number 1 overall pick, I go Kamara and Chuba Hubbard like we talked about, or if I feel really good about getting Montgomery in the early 6th round, then I'll load up on those wide receivers early on. So I do think there's some good values. I like Aaron Jones.
Jordan Mason's there.
Right. Jordan Mason was good last year, and I think they
killed Minnesota last year.
He did, and we know how that is. We covet what we see. So
right.
This is not a round I'm super comfortable in. Even like Quinshawn Judkins, I get why he's going behind Caleb Johnson, because Caleb Johnson's in like a 1v1 battle. At least in Cleveland, you've got Jerome Ford, and they did draft Dylan Sampson, who's a very talented guy in his own right, that if he had been the guy taken there, we'd be talking about him maybe in this range. So I think he's just got that little bit of extra competition.
I've been trying to pivot away from you most every round because I feel like it's the best thing to do. In this case, it is not the best thing to do. Montgomery, over his course of time, and you're right, John Morton has talked about the new offensive coordinator. Why am I going to change things? I'm not. It's basically been his approach. Montgomery has 404 carries, 1,790 rushing yards, 25 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons in Detroit. He missed 5 games last year, but the 16 point per game that he scored while he was playing ranked 14th in the league. And you're getting that in round 6. I'll take that all day. And then I'll move on to round 7, where there's some more favorite players of mine. Some more guys, a lot of value in here. Juwan Jennings at 73, Baker Mayfield at 74, Roma Dunze at 75, Tony Pollard 76, DeAndre Swift at 77, Deebo Samuel Sr. at 78, TJ Hawkinson 79, Isaiah Pacheco is at 80, Bo Nix at 81, and Khalil Shakir is at 82. Travis Kelce 83, Jacoby Myers at 84. A couple of my favorite receivers in there in this price range, but at the price range, not like saying they're the best receivers in football, but they might be the most overlooked. Go ahead, Mike. Who do you like in this range?
Well, this is where I would start to think about quarterback, right? The Baker Mayfield, Bo Nix combo, either one of those, right? If I'm late in this round and one of those presents himself to me and they're the best on the board, all the other ones are gone, you're getting QB 7 or 8, and you still have a chance to have like a top 4 to 5 quarterback in actual results. I'm interested there. I settled on, this is the toughest round for me to decide on one player. I do like a lot of guys. I like Juwan Jennings here for sure. I really like Travis Kelce, and he was almost the pick. Tight end 6, but you're getting him in the late 7th here. But I settle, Bob. This is a little risky, and some people will be turned off by this, but DeAndre Swift, to me, again, we're talking about the Ben Johnson effect, okay? Coming into Chicago, who are the people you're worried about taking the significant touches away in that backfield, right? So,
nobody.
Roschon, I mean, maybe he's the goal line back, and that's possible, and then maybe he'll have a little bit of later value. Kyle Monangai, I've had a person who follows the Bears very closely say that's probably the guy to watch more for the early down challenge here. But I think DeAndre Swift, it's like a make or break season in the sense that you've got a guy whose system has produced phenomenal numbers for multiple running backs. You've got a quarterback that should be able to keep people honest with a phenomenal collection of pass catching talent that they've got. So they can definitely keep the pressure off of the backfield. Look, I've been getting a lot of DeAndre Swift. I'll be honest with you. RB28, Bob. Come on, you were talking about a mid RB3. I think that's well worth the risk for the potential upside.
I think a lot of people's problems is the overlap with Ben Johnson and DeAndre Swift was only one season. DeAndre Swift was shipped out in the second year. I don't know that was a Ben Johnson decision, people. I think we're reading a lot into that. I think the moves the Bears have not made so far, they have not added a big body player.
Right.
And I think those are the things that highlight for me. I'm going to probably go with one of the 2 receivers bookending this round. Juwan Jennings is going to be my choice. Look, he's coming off his most productive season, career highs in targets, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns. Had one of the highest scoring games of the season in week 3. Just a phenomenal game. I'm not sure when Brandon Ayuk is coming back. I like Ricky Pearsall too, just fine. But I don't think and I like George Kittle. So maybe if I took Kittle and I don't want to just load up, I could go with Jacoby Myers at the tail end of this round. Perennially overlooked in first 2 seasons in Vegas. He's had 1,834 receiving yards, 158 catches, played 15 games or more each year. That's the healthiness is a thing. But he's wide receiver 21 in points per game over those 2 years. You're getting him in this point in the draft is pretty sweet. So I'll go Jennings unless I have Kittle, and then I'll go ahead and pivot away, and we will pivot into round 8. Where we'll find at the start of the heap there, Ricky Pearsall at 85. Brian Robinson Jr. is 86. Stephon Diggs is 87. Wide receiver 43 there. Kyler Murray, 88. Jonnu Smith is 89. Brandon Ayuk, the aforementioned, is number 90. Cooper Kupp is number 91. Jaden Reed, 92. Tyrone Tracy Jr., 93. Mark Andrews, 94. Cam Scatterbo 95, and Matthew Golden is 96. Do tell, Mike Dempsey.
Okay, Brian Robinson is probably criminally undervalued. By the way, so is Austin Eckler right now, I think,
Right,
in
right.
fantasy drafts. But
Outside the 10 rounds we'll be talking about.
Right. Oftentimes, Brian Robinson is the guy you get to that point in the draft, and you're like, who's the guy I'm very convinced he's still starting. Right. I'm convinced. Like, you see Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scatterbo going nearly back to back. That's because nobody knows how it's going to work out there. If I had to, I'm going to roll the dice on Scatterbo.
Me too.
Right, because they've seen Tracy, they've had Tracy, and they went and brought this guy in who can do everything, right? He can catch it, he can run it, he's a tough goal line type
what's
back.
His real superpower, though, is running with poor blocking, or at least that we've seen, right? And I mean, if you're the Giants, you're thinking maybe that's something we can use. So I'm with you. If I'm taking a chance on one of those two, it is Scatterbo.
Right. Scatterbo's a tackle breaker, and you may need that. The worse your offensive line play is, the more you need that. You can always use it. Stephon Diggs. You can. I mean, I don't think it's a bad ninth round. It could pay off very well, but he didn't have the best start to spring. Let's put it that way. We're still I have to remember we're not quite in summer yet. Ricky Pearsall. Like, if I know when I'm considering Jennings, I can get Ricky Pearsall around later. Now the thing is, you don't, because Jennings is going, early 7th. And Pearsall's going early 8th. So it's not like 2 rounds of difference where it could come back to you. But I like Pearsall here. But, a couple of guys, I like Jayden Reed. I think he's a little bit undervalued at this point in time. And ultimately, I settled on Mark Andrews. I think he's still got something to prove. One more tight end one season. Now, what I've taken to do, like in best ball, I'll draft Andrews, another tight end, and maybe grab Likely as well at times in case it goes south for Mark Andrews. But I mean, Mark Andrews is tight end 8 here. I trust him more than I trust Jonnu Smith, at least for this year. Conditions change year to year.
Right.
Andrews has been Lamar Jackson's go-to, and I get the way it ended last year.
We remember the last thing we see, and we remember that horrible drop. I think that's a big part of this price, because he had a career-high 11 touchdowns. That's been his lane. It was a slow start for him. Remember the Kansas City game? We all thought Isaiah Likely was a thing. I'm going to join you and plant my flag on Mark Andrews here as well. Right. I think he's the clear standout value. And I think part of this was, dependent on, does he remain a Baltimore Raven? I think that seems to be baked into the cake now. So I'm with you, and he's at the tail end of the round. And I think that's fantastic. We'll jump into round 9, where we find Jaylen Warren, a starting NFL running back, we think. Maybe not. Maybe we don't think that. As 97, Caleb Williams at 98, Najee Harris at 99, Justin Fields, the new quarterback of the New York Jets, at 100, Josh Downs at 101, Jared Goff 102, Evan Ingram 103, Brock Purdy 104, Michael Pittman Jr. 105, and we have Darnell Mooney at 106, Dak Prescott at 107, and Zach Charbonnet at 108. Mike Dempsey, who's your player of choice?
Good number of quarterbacks in this round, obviously. And, the upside play here is Justin Fields, I think, if you're going to go the quarterback direction. I put it this way, if I haven't drafted a quarterback, I'm probably more inclined to take Jared Goff here as my number one guy. But if I have, and I'm playing best ball particular, and I'm looking for that swing for the upside, Fields is the guy that I want on my roster. I don't know if I want to have to count on him week in, week out, though. Let's see. I like Mooney. He's got some good value here. I'm kind of fading all the Indianapolis pass catchers. Josh Downs the most appealing, but quarterback situation is not that appealing right now. So you got Downs and Pittman in this round. Ultimately, I settled with Evan Ingram, Bob, who's going off his tight end 9. Going to play that Joker role in the.
I was going to wear the makeup for this. I was going to wear the makeup for this recording.
I thought you were wearing it. I'm sorry. Bad hair day or something. Anyway, I think Ingram could be a top 5 tight end, right? He is. I think he has a chance to be a little bit more dynamic downfield in this offense than he was in Jacksonville, where he was basically a crossing route guy, high volume. The athleticism that he's got is not matched by many tight ends. I think he can be a good red zone target there, although he's never been a big touchdown scorer. I get that, but you're not paying a premium here. You're getting a guy that I think has pretty much pure upside as tight end 9 off the board. I think, easily top 6 tight end is kind of how I'm feeling about him. In fact, if you give me TJ Hawkinson at cost versus Evan Ingram, it's no question I'm going to
Not
go
even
with Evan
close.
Ingram here in this
I'm
one.
with
So
you.
that was the easy one.
I like the quarterback value in this round. Caleb Williams, we saw the high end with him last year when they switched from the offensive coordinators. We switched to Thomas Brown, away from Shane Waldron to Thomas Brown. We saw a couple of top 5 performances, and I think Ben Johnson can get that out of Caleb Williams. I love Justin Fields. The rushing equity is there. Jared Goff, been a top 10, been like quarterback 7 2 of the last 3 years. I don't know that changes materially. Brock Purdy, super solid. I'll probably just go with the cheapest one, Dak Prescott, 2 years removed from a quarterback, 3 seasons, throwing 36 touchdowns, has another weapon in that passing game. He's got to stay healthy. Maybe they'll run a little bit more, but I think this offense will still go through the pass. So I'm going to go with Prescott at 107, and we're going to finish off our 10 rounds with the 10th round, as we should. We'll go with 109. We'll start out with Javonte Williams, the Dallas Cowboys running back. Travis Etienne Jr. in Jacksonville. Jordan Mason, discussed him a little bit. Justin Herbert at 112. Ramondre Stevenson at 113. Tyler Warren, 114. David Njoku is 115. And Emeka Egbuka, number 116. Keon Coleman, Harris favorite at 117. Bashal Tutin, the new Jags rookie running back at 118. Trey Harris, I always like to support the Harrises, at 119. The Chargers rookie receiver. And Colston Loveland, the Bears rookie tight end, at 120. Mike, please give me your selection.
All right, some good values here as well. I like Njoku for a lot of the reasons I like Ingram. I think the upside is there. You're very low risk as tight end 11, regardless of who's playing quarterback. I'm willing to invest there, but some stand out. Like if I knew Javonte was starting in Dallas, and I felt pretty good that he'd be able to hold that job, that would be a very appealing selection here. Same with Travis Etienne. I think the best thing you can hope for with Travis Etienne almost is that he is on another team, that another team has an injury and seeks him out. Now, the reason I say that, I understand Liam Cohen came out, the Jaguars head coach, and said, I don't know where all this talk about Etienne being on the block is coming from. I don't think he's on the block. I just think he's available. There's a subtle difference, right? I don't think they're shopping him, but I think if the right offer comes along and they're comfortable with the other guys, I think they drafted Bashal Tutin to ultimately be their guy. And that's the guy I'm going to go with here because I think he could follow a Bucky Irving arc. Okay, you had Rachaad White as the incumbent in Tampa last year, and he started the season as the starter and was going ahead of Bucky Irving in drafts. And then it kind of all right, it wasn't great, and we need a little bit more juice. And Liam Cohen inserted Bucky Irving in, and then things really continued to excel in Tampa. There was a good offense for the most part for the whole year, but got much better in the run game as the season went on. This team wants to run it. Liam Cohen wants to run it. They've invested. They brought in 6 offensive linemen that'll probably be among the final 10 that are on the roster. So, they certainly tried to focus on that area. Adding Travis Hunter to Brian Thomas Jr. keeps defenses honest on the outside. You can't just stack the box against the run. And this is a play for the second half of the season, I think, Bob. I mean, there is a world where Etienne's not on the opening day roster, but there's also a world where a guy who's averaged 3.8, 3.7 yards the last 2 seasons is the opening day starter. And by midseason, the switch has been made. I understand some people think that switch would be to Tank Bigsby, and we're not talking about Tank. He's not in this round. I think he's a good value later on as well, but I'll take for swing for the fences with Bashal Tutin here.
I have oddly convinced myself that Javonte Williams is the guy. Like, you could talk yourself into this. I think at that price, like, I'm drafting past the workload. I like Jaden Blue, too. If I miss on Javonte Williams, he's we've already used the silence of the lambs. Well, we covet what we last see. We're going to use the Sesame Street approach. One of these things is not like the other. You're learning all kinds of new fantasy techniques here on the hot seat, and that would be Jaden Blue in Dallas. Got a little more speed, a little smaller, but a little something there. So there you have it. I think that's a pretty good representation of what we have going in the first 10 rounds. Mike in round 1 is drafting Bijan Robinson. I'll take Derrick Henry at the end. Brian Thomas Jr. for Mike. I'll take Nico Collins. They're going right at the turn. Jackson Smith and Jigba in round 3 for Mike. Kyron Williams for me. Alvin Kamara in round 4 for Mike. Alvin Kamara or George Kittle for me. James Conner and Chuba Hubbard are our choices in round 5. Chuba's early in the round. Conner is late. David Montgomery is both our choices. last year's running back, 14 in points per game, people, while he was healthy, available very late in round 6. DeAndre Swift for Mike in round 7. I'll go Jawan Jennings. If I miss out on him, I'm not afraid to go Jacoby Myers. Mark Andrews for both of us in round 8, coming off a career touchdown year and a guy that's still a Baltimore Raven, or at least for the foreseeable future. We hope he stays that way. Mike's going with Evan Ingram, the new Joker in Sean Payton's offense in Denver, the tight end. I like that pick as well. I'm going to go Dak Prescott, the tail end of a group of quarterbacks I like an awful lot. We'll close it out in round 10 with Bashal Tutin, the Jacksonville rookie. Look, I'm hard-pressed not to go with guys whose second number of their 40 speed is a 3. There's a 3 after the period. I'm excited. If it's 4, anything in that range, he's a great player. And I'm going to go with Javonte Williams, who will never be accused of running a sub 4.4 40. But still, I think he'll get the workload. I like what they've done with the offensive line there a little bit. They've made some changes. Clayton Adams comes in from Arizona, did great things with the running game as the offensive line coach there. Won't be calling the plays, but that helps out. We've been talking the last couple of shows, Mike, about guys we're taking outside that range. There's Adam Thielen as a player I love who's available way late. I know there's some players you love outside that mix. Is there anyone that stands out at the top of the list that you feel like you'd really like to have?
By the way, I'm not as in on Thielen this year as I have been in past years, right? With the addition of McMillan, and I think
14th,
Leggett
15th.
I'm just saying, I get it. I do. In years past, he's been a priority for me. He's not. Now it's more like, all right, I'm still taking Xavier Leggett over him this year. I'm banking on the younger legs. Just kind of scrolling down the list here. I mentioned Austin Eckler. I think he's fantastic at pick 142, running back 48, Bob. I mean, practically an RB5 in PPR leagues. That's definitely one I'm keeping an eye out for. Leggett is another one I've got a ton of shares of. I would grab some Dobbins while the getting's good because his ADP is only going to rise, right? And I'll give you one more. Boring as hell. Nobody's going to be excited about this pick. Nobody's going to bat an eye when you take him. I'll take Zach Ertz as my starting tight end. Take him as my starter. He's tight end 20. Right? I get they added Debo. You count on, I'm not counting on Debo. Like, I've got much more interest in Zach Ertz than I do in Debo Samuel. And he's already got a year of baked in chemistry there. So I think that's a phenomenal selection as the 20th tight end off the board.
Mike, as usual, you and I agree on a number of things. That's 10 rounds, 18 players, because there was some agreement there.
Yep.
And one big edge for all of you in your draft day plans. Appreciate you listening. Remember, ADP shifts daily. You can go to Football Guys and track that in real time with the ADP rankings. They are averaged and set up every day. We told you what we like. I'm going to tell you what else I like. Football Diehards is coming back on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio starting July 7th, weeknights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So set your reminders. We'll have Camp Battle Sleepers, all the preseason buzz, everything you need. And that's only the start. Wait till the season. You're really going to get tired of us. But for now, from July through the start of the season, 5 days a week, and probably be closer to 7 when the season begins. And also, don't forget, if you haven't already, signed up for the Football Guys Daily email update. Biggest stories in fantasy football, explained, summarized, and sent to your inbox every single day. It's free, it's smart, it's essential. You must get it. And you must come back next Tuesday for another great episode of On the Hot Seat. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Bob. See you soon.